Welcome everyone to this Clubhouse event. Your energy, your health, be responsible with empowering solutions. I would like to start by raising the vibration in the space that we're in now by calling for the highest possible vibration and calling for the truth to come forward into this discussion so that the truth can be seen, heard, and spoken, and that we all be in the frequency of truth and have nothing but the truth. Shall I call for the divine feminine to bring balance back into our world, showing us the way through honor, respect, and gratitude, and calling for the highest possible vibration? I ask for everyone to take a sip of water as water holds memory and ask for the water to hydrate our brain and body. Now let's take a deep breath in. 3, 2, 1, and let it all out. Take another deep breath in, bringing in peace, joy, gratitude, and life. And exhale out, releasing all stress and worry, all that does not serve you. And like Veritas, everyone, I'd like to call for the oneness and truth of the information shared by each and every one of us on this call, calling in the frequency of truth so that we all can experience all that is truth, as it is our purpose to bring forward the truth so that we all can benefit from the information shared. With honor, respect, and gratitude to you all. The greeting of Enlakesh signifies unity, where everything is related to one another, where everything and everyone is connected. It is the idea of community, where we can share with one another our ideas, goals, and aspirations, so that we all, as one, can benefit and thrive. And Lakesh is the declaration in which we are clearing out our spaces, the space we're in now, so that we are able to bring forth a truthful, elevated, and enlightened discussion this evening, clearing away those thoughts that we tend to pick up and carry with us from our everyday life experiences. The words En Lakesh and Veritas is a powerful affirmation that assists in bringing clarity and a greater understanding of truth to all who are present and all who are listening. Our words have power. So let us remember and decide to use our words carefully, using words of upliftment, encouragement, and enlightenment. By doing so, as a collective, will help us to transform our spaces and places into higher frequencies and better experiences for each and every one of us here, as well as for those who we touch. So, En Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, with honor, respect, and gratitude. Before we begin, I'd like for everyone to hold their water in their hands. And I now ask for everyone with intention in mind to send the frequency of En Lakesh to your water. And then take a sip of the water. We are 70% water, and water holds information and memory, thereby assisting in incorporating this elevated frequency of En Lakesh into our cells and into the subatomic space within our bodies. It's all about quantum physics. By doing this technique, it will allow for the ease and flow of the information we'll be sharing with one another this evening here. I just want to remind everyone that you can access the recording to this Clubhouse event and recordings from our prior Clubhouse events on Vimeo and on YouTube by searching En Lakesh Studios. And please remember to subscribe if you have not already done so. You can also find more information and content on enlakeshstudio2.com so that you can keep up to date with the information and content that is continually being added. All right, everyone. Let me go ahead and start our discussion. Let us first begin by reviewing some current events. So in the recent news, there are reports of an impending national railroad workers' strike. 115,000 fed up freight railroad workers. And apparently they've been under negotiations with a stall contract for 30 months. And these workers were gathering in Galesburg, Illinois, rallying together. Galesburg was a location of Knox College where my daughter attend school at some point in her college career. So they're unifying, they're coming together like the truck drivers towards a common goal. And there is apparent 99.5% approval of authorizing the strike at a recent meeting that was held that will significantly affect our supply chain, resulting in significant shortages. They're also supported by several other crafted unions. So this leads to last week, we discussed other impending shortages that's going on, if not already going to affect our food supply, if not affecting it now. And we also spoke on the need to become self-sufficient and self-sovereign. It's now time to start thinking about growing some of our own food, storing supplies. We will have to start thinking differently and work as a community. The value of the dollar is sinking fast, and it may get to the point where we may have to start bartering for goods and services. But we will need to have something to barter with. So last week, we briefly discussed how bees provides a great example of living and communing with one another together. And today I invite Tiffany here on Clubhouse, and I asked for her if she could share her experience and expertise with working with the bees and how they work together and how we can learn from them, connecting with the earth and the source. Tiffany, welcome.
In location veritas, with honor, respect, and gratitude. Thank you for having me. This is
And location. Yeah, location veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude. I should say Tiffany of the Sun.
this is one of my favorite subjects. Two things just popped into my mind. I know you have questions to ask, but I just have to share this because it's so connected to what you literally just said, in terms of storing food and in terms of bartering. And honey has a shelf life of forever. I don't know if anyone knows that, but it does.
Mm,
And I mean, they found honey in the pyramids in Egypt, and it was still good, and it's a
wow.
great preserver as well. So that's just a super fascinating side note. And we used to use honey to barter for deer meat and eggs and all sorts of things when we were living off the land. And so that was just you just brought up so many cool components right off the
Oh wow.
bat
So you
without
actually did that. You were
we did.
bartering with a honey and for wow, wow.
We were because we did not want to be a part of killing the animals, even though we were eating the animals, and had great respect for them. And so we
Hmm.
had friends who also had great respect for the animal and utilized the entire animal. And so we would barter honey for deer meat, for deer liver, for the bones, the parts that they weren't using that we really wanted to use. And it was fascinating. And same with, we had enough going on that we didn't have our own chickens, and so we would barter for all sorts of things, for eggs and for services and herbs, and just across the board we use honey as trade.
Wow, that's really cool. Really cool. So
Sorry
how
for doing that. I feel like we jumped to the middle of the conversation at the
oh no,
beginning, but
no. But that's actually important to know because I think this is going to be the wave of the future.
right,
And we have to think and be open-minded behind this in order to survive.
absolutely.
So So, if you wouldn't mind, can you share with us how did you get started with the bees, learning how to work with and
Yes.
learning what to provide?
I it was kind of a fascinating roundabout way because I was teaching high school English, and I taught English for 10 years, and I loved teaching, but I was teaching in a traditional setting, and I was overworked and overstressed and constantly sick and on antibiotics all of the time, and I desperately needed to find balance, but I didn't know how to do that in that setting. And so the only thing I knew to do was to just shift settings. And I didn't even know really what that meant, other than I just quit my job. And I eventually bought a house built in 1790 and lived off the land and became an herbalist and beekeeper. And it was through that process that that balance was really restored, and I was able to come back to myself and actually learn who I am and what my purpose in this world is. But the bees specifically, how I actually came to work with them was I had quit my job, and we were living with my husband's parents at the time, and uh, he we didn't really have a lot of money. We were trying to figure out what we were doing, and we were in the process of trying to buy this house and live off the land. And I ran out of the expensive skincare that I was using. I didn't have money to buy any more of it. And so I started trying to figure out how to make my own products. And honey and bee pollen, or not bee pollen, honey and beeswax kept coming up in a lot of like the DIY recipes for honey, for masks and for skincare and for chapstick. And so then I realized, well, it also costs money to, to buy honey and beeswax from places. And so randomly, a pamphlet showed up at our door one time from the Ohio Beekeepers Association, and they were teaching beekeeping classes. And I thought, okay, well, we have a garden. I'm thanking the bees and I'm appreciating what they're doing for our garden. And so why don't I take some of these classes so then I can figure out a way to have my own honey and my own beeswax so I can make my own skincare. I mean, it was like really that basic of a thought process at that time. And honey tasted good, like it wasn't even really any more than that. But on my journey, obviously everything unfolded and showed me the true path. But when I took these beekeeping classes, and my husband took them with me, and his mother took them, and we just fell in love with the bees, and it was fascinating. And there was a speaker there who was actually selling his hives. And so we were like, we'll buy some of them. And so we bought 3 hives, not knowing what we were doing, and just jumped in full force and let the bees teach us the rest.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. So cool. So, in doing so, what then have you learned from, working with the bees? Because I mean, there's so much information. Like first from the class, you learn
Right.
what they produced and, what other information, because then we can later on delve into what you then gathered, as far as insight with working with bees.
Absolutely. Well, and in the class, and this is something really cool just for everyone to know. Not that everyone wants to become a beekeeper, but for anyone who does, not only do I teach beekeeping classes, but you can go to every state, and every county has like a beekeepers association. And they offer classes, they offer insight, they offer knowledge. And so we just learned the base. And if you're looking for hives, that's a good place to start, to find local hives, because people are always, selling some component of them. But we learned the basics of beekeeping and, the basic details about bees themselves, but in those classes. But what I didn't realize was that the bees were really the answer to everything that I needed at that time. I mean, and continue to be. They became this integral part of my self-sufficiency journey. Not just as pollinators who helped me grow food, and helped everything grow better, but a much deeper, as like a connection to myself, to source, to nature as a whole. Working with the bees as anyone can imagine, probably requires an intense sense of calmness.
Hmm.
When there are thousands and thousands of bees flying around you, you don't really have another choice other than to just stand and be calm or run away. I mean, those are the 2 options.
Right.
And so it became this really incredible opportunity to learn how to be in the moment, and for this meditative state that I hadn't had in my life up until that point. I mean, I was in the rat race of of the traditional education system. I was up at 4:30. I was to bed at midnight. I was constantly grading. It was just, I couldn't even catch my breath. And so I was forced for the first time in my life to just stop and to slow down and observe and listen and learn. And the bees and Mother Nature, in and of herself, really taught me how to balance. And
Mm-hmm.
the earth and the bees and source were all connected, and they, all of this connection was what I needed to shift in me. I didn't know even what it meant to be grounded. And so I became grounded. I
Mm-hmm.
became inspired by nature. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
it was fascinating because it started as like a calling inside of me and a shift of vibrational frequency that I didn't really understand. I just had to leave, like do the exact opposite of what I was doing, right? And so when I did that, I was propelled into freedom. And the new vibration that I needed was in nature. And it started to move inside of me. And I got clearer, as the bees vibrated around me, I got clearer. And then more, uh, everything else that then I went to ended up getting clearer. And the more grounded and more clarity I had, the closer I was with the land, the more sovereignty I gained, the freer I became. I mean, it was just this beautiful symbiotic experience. And I came back to myself, and
Mm-hmm.
um, learned how to work with nature. And I learned that we are all connected and nothing is separate. And in that journey, I didn't know at that time that the bees were always communicating with me, and they were
Yeah.
always clearing me. Bees are, they do so many things for us, but one thing that they do that many people don't understand is that they clear the ether. They literally clear the air as they fly around. And so when bees are flying in front of us, they're clearing us. When bees are flying over the flowers, they're clearing the flowers, they're clearing the food. And so um,
Yeah, that's
I,
amazing. It's basically tapping into the consciousness of the bees. That's
yes,
what you learn, and you evolve to that point where you were able to commune with them.
right,
Which is a wonderful
absolutely.
thing.
And from that point forward, then I was able to just commune and connect with everything. I was able to see that we are not separate from anything. And I would step over the ant, or let the crumbs stay on the table so the ant could eat the crumb. And it became this. Or I would ask the flowers before I would pick them, or I would talk to the vegetables as I was harvesting them. And it just, I just learned so much about our interconnectedness. And
Right.
since then, the bees have come to me in much deeper communications.
Okay,
And
cool, cool. Well, before you go into that,
yes,
because I mean that's going to be real interesting. Let's talk about the transportation of these hives.
yes,
Where
yes,
you suited
okay.
up, because I have I have somebody here too that I want to chime in Clubhouse, Tavares, talking about the transportation of the hives, that his experience in transporting the hives, you know and
Absolutely.
how you have to have that calmness.
Oh, oh, yes, I'll chime in whenever you cue me up. Oh, but
I
so
remember that moment, T. That was so good. But Tavares actually has a much more beautiful version of the transportation of the hives. That when I transported it, it was a matter of I met the beekeeper I was buying the hives from, and he let me look at all of his hives and pick the 3 that I wanted. And in the middle of choosing these hives and loading them onto his truck, one of the hives swarmed. And my very first day as beekeeper on site, I was in the middle of 30,000 bees flying around me. And
You
that's
were
normally,
you suited up? Were you
I was
suited up?
suited up. I didn't have gloves on,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I was suited up because the beekeeper who who I was buying from, I just kind of was going off of his lead, and he was like, I never wear gloves. I can, touch things and move more gently without gloves. And so I was like, okay. My husband's like, okay, we won't, whatever. We don't know what we're doing, but we won't wear gloves. And so, but we just stood, and it was, to this day, one of the most transformative and just magical experiences of my life. I mean, we just stood there and watched 30,000 bees fly around, and they had no interest in us. And then we just followed them, and just on foot, we just watched them. And they went like about a house next to it, and then across the street, and then they checked out a few trees, and then they ended up literally landing on one tree. And the beekeeper was like, okay, yeah, now we just put a bucket underneath it, and we make sure that we take the whole clump of bees and we put it in the bucket. And we're like, what are you talking about? He's like sticking his bare hands in this clump of bees, and like no one's getting stung. Like it was spectacular. Wow. And so then we put him in the bucket, we put a little screen over it, and then he was like, you just leave the bucket here with the screen over it, the queen's in the bucket, and over the course of, the next few hours, the other thousands and thousands of bees will just come to the bucket, because they can smell the queen's pheromones, and then we'll just put her in a different hive. And he was so calm about it, and we were like transfixed, and it was amazing. And I remember on the drive home us just talking and saying, that was really, really crazy. Are we really gonna do this? And then both of us thinking and saying out loud, like, we have to do this again. Like we were so excited. We were like, it was so crazy and borderline terrifying, but we really want to do it again. And at that moment, both of our fears just of anything with bees went to the wayside. Now, my husband built up other fear along the way that he then had to shed again. But that was, my story of gathering the hive the first time.
Yeah. What is it that one of the call for truth divination cards, the trick of fear?
The biggest trick humanity has played
Yeah.
on us is fear. Right.
Yeah. That's
Right.
it. The
Right.
big trick
That's it.
is fear itself.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got another story here. Tavares, will you share your story in transporting beehives over to
Yeah,
your place?
I'm
That
glad.
was
In La Question Veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude to every.
delegation veritas. Honor, respect, and gratitude.
I'm going to start this story by sending gratitude to Tiffany for being not only a teacher, instructor, navigator, but also being emotional support. and
Mm-hmm.
and from locating I think at this point she was in California, but she was assisting us with locating a beekeeper that was a little more humane and considerate in terms of the process and cultivation of the bees, where they weren't using like toxins and like feeding them like sugar water and things like that. That just didn't make sense when they produced their own.
Mm-hmm.
So we we located someone, and I went in my truck with a buddy of mine. Many of you are familiar with Adil. Now, we were prepared. Like, we already had a bee suit and a beehive, known as the flow hive, but we didn't bring the bee suit to go pick them up. So, put a pin in that. So, so we get to the destination, and there's this couple, this older couple, and they have this trailer, this like open hitch trailer with several stacks of bees, nooks. And for those who aren't familiar with nooks, it's this box container that has the bees. And inside the nook was somewhere around like 25,000, I think so. Somewhere around 15 to 25,000, something like that. And, they're looking like, all right, well, here's the bees. And I'm thinking, okay, we can put them in the back of the truck. And, bees are just buzzing and flying everywhere. And the woman, she doesn't have on a suit, but she has on a face mask with a net, and she was stung when we saw her. Like, she just got stung in the face with her protection. So I thought that was interesting. And she's,
Mm-hmm.
you guys don't have any protection? I'm using my country accent because that's what it sounds like. No, ma'am, we don't, not here. And then so can we just put the nook in the trunk or in the flatbed of the truck? She's like, no, that's going to irritate them. It would be best to put them in the cab. So Adele's looking at me like, bro. And surprisingly, I am like super chill with the process this far. Like, all right, we're gonna be all right. I talked to the bees. That was something that Lota instructed us to do. Speak to the bees before you get there. Let them know you're on the way. So they were already in agreement. So there was within me already this understanding. Like, we're cool. I'm cool. You're cool. Even more so, they're like, it's just we're just concerned about you. You make sure you're good, and then we'll be good because they're going off of our vibe. And also, a fun little side story. I did a whole video regarding this, and in the
Yes.
video clip, it's
Excellent.
hilarious because when they put the bees inside the back of the cab, there were bees all outside of the Nook box. So of course they're inside the truck and flying around, and I'm like sitting in the driver's seat and saying, "Get in, Adil," and he's looking at me like, "Nah, maybe if you like drive forward and backwards, that'll keep the bees. That'll help them get out of the truck." And like the bees were following the Nook. There was no getting them out, so he had to overcome his fear and hop in. So we had to drive an hour to get back home with these bees in our truck, and they're all climbing around on the windows, climbing on the front dash. And before we left, we called Tiffany. Before we hit the road, we got to the end of the driveway, called Tiffany, and she was uh, she was very mindful of the verbiage and the incorrect. She had never seen anything like this before in her life. She called it bravery. One could say it was foolish, depending on perspective. But we were like, we made it this far. We have to see it through.
Hmm.
So we sent them in like Catching Veritas. We had a real moment to give them those frequencies, and we basically played hope. We were saying Ho'oponopono on our way back home, and we noticed like literally they were going based off of our vibe, but there were still little bees crawling around. And the funny thing is, Adil's temperament regarding them shifted where they're crawling on the window and he's looking at them, and he went from being scared to saying how adorable and cute they were.
I
He's
know. Yep. He says. I remember he said he was one was looking at him right on his like by his nose and his eye, and he can see the whiskers, and he
yeah,
thought.
yeah, he was like the furry part. It's like a little lion's mane, but on a beer. You guys are so adorable. Whoa, that's a rapid transformation. And
Yes.
so we make it home, and then at this point, I decided to put on the bee suit after all. And we had to take the bees in through the house to get to the back patio. So we cleared the path. Lotus is there watching the whole process, and there's bees resting on top of the Nook, and they were just chill. And then of course I ended up reaching back out to Tiffany for assistance with transferring um, the I forgot what the slats are called, but
The frames.
the frames, yes, into the official hive. And it was just a beautiful process, and just to be engaged with nature like that, and I left unscathed, no bites or anything, or
Hmm.
things, correction. But, it lasted. That experience lasted for quite some time. So that was my story. And again, thank you, Tiffany, for the guidance and sending the positive energy to this wild experience that we had.
I knew you had it the whole time. I knew you'd be good.
But it was transformational to say the least. And uh, yeah, we
Yeah, I mean this is a perfect example of how we can commune with uh, nature, with the earth, with everything around us, with everything that's living. And that's a it's a wonderful story and example, and how our environments are a reflection on how we feel. I mean, you basically shared that you were calm, and the bees sensed that you were calm, so then it didn't affect you. They were in a line in accord with riding with you in the truck, and everything is all good.
yeah. If I may share one last thing,
Yes.
there's something that Lotus has been sharing about how we as humans, we are nature. All those wonderful things, all that wonderful information that Tiffany shared earlier about how just the essence of the bees they are clearing, with their frequencies. It's just fascinating. And but yet we are afraid of something that is, or these beings that are so beneficial to our existence. You all know we can't
Mhm.
exist without them. but then even more so, we share a great large percentage of our genome with them as well. So it's like we're afraid of ourselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of moving back in harmony with these aspects of self, it's of extreme importance if we want to continue with not just surviving but our evolution as a species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know, it's
absolutely.
interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, no, please go ahead.
I was going to say what's interesting about what you just said, Tavares, is that it's almost, you know how like sometimes people just don't want to know the truth. You know, and they're like, oh no, I don't want a card reading. No, I don't want to really know what, I don't really want to know what it is. I don't really want to know what the truth is. And they're very vocal about, I don't want to know. You know, it kind of is that. And we, like you just said, it's almost like we're afraid of ourselves. It's fascinating. And so stepping in to the truth is, you know, one of the overarching solutions to all of this, right? And
Yeah.
you know, I also feel it's fascinating that ever since my first experience with bees, and Tavares's, I would imagine, will probably be similar as well. I have yet to pick up a nuke or a full hive and ever have anything other than just super chill and peace and ease and grace anymore. Like I just picked up a nuke maybe a month and a half or 2 months ago, and I didn't even have a suit on. I just put it right in the back of my car, seat belted it in, talked to it, ho'oponopono the whole way home. One bee flew up and was on my steering wheel, but it wasn't even a thought of it being anything other. But it's almost as if we need to step into it with our first experience to like really harmonize in the
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's actually mastering our thoughts and and our emotions. That's what will heal us,
Right.
basically.
Right.
Keep us balanced, you
And
know.
the bees need us to be in a state of elevation to be able to work with them. And so it's kind of shifting out very quickly all of that fear, you
And
know, at the beginning to step into it. Sorry, T.
yeah, yeah, if I may, this rolling off of what you were saying makes me think of another call for the truth maxim from Lao Tzu. What you fear, you draw near. And you know,
Hmm.
people are maybe they're dining outside of the restaurant or just at the park, and a bee passes by, and then they just go berserk and lose their minds and just start swinging and swinging their arms and trying to swat the bee away, or actually any other insect for that matter. But specifically with bees, you know, if you ever notice their demeanor, they're not trying to bother you. You know,
No, they're not. I've seen bees around my place, and like I'll walk outside and they're there, and I'm like, "Oh, hi," and I'll just keep going, and then they're going their merry way as I'm going my merry way, giving them Menlakesh, and so I mean, they pick up on our vibrations, on they pick up on our frequencies.
and that's actually the point I'm alluding to. You know, there when we act fearful and we're like in this survival mode, fight or flight, and then we're trying to kill it, and then that's when we end up getting stung. That
Right.
things go
Right.
left. With any animal, pretty much for the most part,
Yes.
thing. So it's just so real to again to your point. We have to master our thoughts because they are us. They are responding to us, and it truly is the oneness. And it's a stretch to see it, but
That's
that is
like
so
being in
true.
front of a lion or a tiger or something, being there, and if they see you, you've seen those movies where I guess there was like the movie in Tarzan. He just kept quiet and still, and then the lion or the tiger or whatever it was, he just walked away. He just kind of like sniffed and then walked away,
A-
and it's kind of similar principle.
As a matter of fact, there's some countries I don't recall the country from the top of my head, but this can be Googled, where there are people who live in harmony with the lions, and where
Mm,
actually help keep the deer population in check. Or
mm,
I think it's a deer population, but they're just roaming around. They're hanging around the people. It's truly fascinating to see the level of relationship that's attainable if we move out of our fear and kind of into greater understanding and also respect, of course, because it is a
right,
lot, right?
right, right, right. Well, that actually leads to, communicating with the bees. Both you and Tiffany are communicators, with the bee. the bees themselves. And do you have any information to add with that? We've got Lauren here as well that we'll ask in a moment as well.
I wanted to bring a thought forward that I just had in connection with communication is that, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, who, doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, and he literally cured epidemics using honey and vinegar and herbs, and he was a bee communicator as well. And he
Mm,
says, I mean, many people have probably heard this before, that if the bees cease to exist, humans have 5 years left on the earth to live.
mm,
And I mean, this was spoken a very long time ago, and in recent times, as the bees have come forward and communicated with me, I've had similar messages. I mean, if it's really as basic as if the bees die, we die, and if we die, the bees die, because we're all one. Like, we are the bees, and the bees are us, and what is making the bees sick is what is making us sick. And the pesticides, the negative and low vibrational thinking, the monocrops, the food that's not really food, that's being pretended to be food, that's a lie. And the eating high fructose corn syrup. I mean, a lot of the bees are dying because they are being fed high fructose corn syrup, and all of their honey is
mm,
being stolen from them.
mhm.
And a lot of people are dying because they are eating high fructose corn syrup and are buying into, and the truth is being stolen from them, and they're not calling for the truth. And so the bees, time and time again, have shared with me that if the bees survive and thrive, so do we, and if we survive and thrive, so do the bees, and that there is no separation. And the reset is in full swing, and we have a choice which side of it we want to be on. I mean, I
Right,
choose to survive and thrive
right, right.
with the bees.
Can you explain how you go ahead and communicate with the bees? What is your process so that for those who, are new to communicating with nature?
Yes, it's been a little bit of a journey, because I didn't know that the bees were communicating with me, and I was communicating with them before I even understood that word in connection with nature. When I first started beekeeping and was living off the land, and was first introduced to meditation and frequencies, the bees were clearing me, and they were communicating with me simply through a feeling. I would be around them and I would feel better. I would feel calmer. And that is a form of communication. We smell a flower, and the aroma encapsulates our aura and our being, and we feel better. And that's one way communication happens for some people, or even looking at something beautiful. We have all of these senses. People think that communication only has to happen in an auditory or a verbal way. And so I think that the way that I started hearing nature and started communicating with bees and with nature in general was through that sense of feeling.
Mm,
And then as I got more in touch with my spirituality, and learning how to call on the consciousness of a thing, by literally simply saying, I call on the consciousness, it's just, then I could hear, like, it's as if, it's almost as if thoughts came in, but words came in as thoughts. And everyone communicates differently, but sometimes I simply, sometimes the bees come to me and they're buzzing in front of my face, and they just say, sit down and get a pen. And I just sit down and get a pen, and I just start writing, like, stream of consciousness, as if I don't have any control over what's being written. I'm just writing. And
right.
sometimes
Just comes to
communications,
thought.
it
What
just
the
comes
thought?
in.
Yeah.
Right, right. And other times, I intentionally go into communication, and I get meditative, and I raise my vibration, and I make sure that I'm in a good, clear space. And, I light a clearing candle, and I go into the Akashic records, and I call on the hive mind. And, information comes forward in that way,
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
well with the bees. And so I think that, that there are a lot of misnomers around what communication has to be, and some people are a little don't really understand because they don't know enough, they feel like, to communicate. But if you just start thinking and looking and talking and listening, um, you'll start hearing. My daughter has never taken, she's 4.5, and she's never taken an Akashic record reading class or a property clearing class, but she's able to sit and ask the bees with open hands, what do you have to share with me?
Right.
And
Whatever comes to her mind, that's the actual communication that's being relayed to her.
absolutely. And when we're in the garden, she'll ask a calendula flower or a strawberry or a tomato or whatever, or a viola, if she can pick it. And she'll say, oh, that flower said no. And sometimes she says she hears it. Sometimes it's just because the plant's holding on to it really tight and it won't let it go. She's like, I guess the plant doesn't want me to have that flower. I mean, and anyone else who's over, she's like, did you ask the plant? You need to ask. Was it hard to pick off? Oh, good, it wasn't hard. The plant must have been saying yes then. So I think that it's just about stepping into it, and in whatever way works for you.
Right, right, right,
And then if you want to take classes, to get deeper, then that's always an option, especially
right,
with Of the Sun. And
right, right, right. Tavares, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, most certainly. Tiffany touched on a lot of wonderful things. I'd like to say, well, from the jump, it's at the point that I'm at, it's as simple as, hey, what do you have to say to me today? Whether it's a
Mm,
fly, a frog, a butterfly, it's gotten to that point. But I didn't start off that way. I started off in the same way as Tiffany, and I think that this is actually a strong suit that many people have that is not really leaned into, and it's the feeling.
yeah.
And to dispel the misnomer, you don't have to be, well, actually, we are born with everything. We're well equipped, but we've been tricked, duped, and bamboozled that this is not possible and that it's something that's limited and reserved for the few gifted on the planet. That's the lie, because we can
Yeah.
clearly see that her child is doing it. you know, I know
Right.
Jay's DNA activated, but still, she hasn't taken a communicators class or anything. So this
It's like
idea,
it's unlearned, basically. It's an unlearned trait when you as you get older, because you've been given all these rules and so forth, you're taught that that's not true, and you unlearn that ability, or not. I shouldn't say necessarily unlearn, but you dismiss it. You dismiss that ability that you innately had, that you were born with.
yeah, I definitely agree. Like it's dismissed fast, or I'd like to use the word we doubt. Because
Mm,
the thing is that many of us are getting it, and one of the early stages of me realizing I'm communicating with things is through plants. Feeling and sensing my plants need water, my plants need sunshine, but it just started from a feeling. They don't have mouths, but they're communicating through signals, and so
yeah.
we have several forms of sensory input. We
Yes.
feel, hear, we see, we touch, we smell. And
Yeah, that
you know,
plant is perfect example, because there are plenty of studies that talk about that. There are even studies where they connect probes onto plants and and then expose it to certain sounds or vibrations, and you can tell. Or if you're feeling something, the plant then elicits an electrical response to this device, so you know that the plants are actually feeling,
yes.
sensing.
And we are electrical beings. Thought is electric through the nervous system and is transmitted. So this idea of sensory input, it's all information. One of the simple examples that I like to give to people who are like, I can't see, spiritually see, I want to open my third eye. And I'm like, dude, stop watching too much YouTube. It's not like that. Yeah. To see is multifaceted. Seeing is not just limited to a visual popping in your head. Seeing is just having the information and the knowingness, and that might. And like one example I'd give is like eating food. There's so many ways we experience the information of eating food. We smell it, we can see it with our eyes, we can feel it, we can taste it, we can even hear it. These are all different ways to pull in the information, but consider that principle applied to the spiritual world or communicating with other forms of life. The same concept translates. It's just we're articulating information, but we got to believe that or know that it's possible. That's one of the first uh, barriers. It's knowing that it's possible. If you don't believe that it can happen, you might as well sit down. It not even try, because you already have the preconceived block, But if you can reach yourself beyond, like, all right, I know it's possible. I need to work on it. I mean, you can definitely get there. And I think anyone can do it, because we were born and designed to do this, a part of the living library of Earth. I'm going to stop and slow down.
No, I agree. Thank you. Thank you. So, both you and Tiffany are communicators, but also Lauren, that's here that joined us, is also a communicator, um, of bees as well as she has on her logo of plants and flowers. So, yes, Lauren, do you have
Oh
anything to
my
share?
goodness, absolutely. I first just have to share my gratitude for hearing everything that has been brought forward thus far. It is so brilliant and so packed with the truth, and I have to agree with all that's been said. It's one thing to note just about with communicating, just to share briefly, is that if we go back to the indigenous times, the aboriginal inhabitants of this planet knew they were designed, just as Tavares said, it is within our blueprint to be able to communicate. That is how they were able to navigate their experiences. They were in communion with the earth and all that came from it, with the animals, with the plants. And that's how they knew how to survive and what plants would be appropriate for them to consume and what wouldn't be. There were all of these things that were coming forward to share with them. So it is so important to remember that it is within us, and it
Right.
has been since the beginning.
Well, that's how our textbooks were developed. I mean, where do you think the origin of all the information that is written in textbooks came from? It didn't come from just one man, or, I mean, where did that man get that information from? It had to have been given to us somehow through communication, but anyway, that's like another topic to delve into. And I didn't mean
Yes.
to interrupt you, but go ahead,
No,
please.
absolutely. I just want to also share, and I know many that are on the line joining with and listening, are property clearers. And I just have to share from my experience, being a property clearer, that is another form of communication.
Yeah,
So many things are trying to communicate with us, and many things are trying to be released and share a message for our advancement, for our evolution, and what needs help. And by us stepping into that truth, we have the abilities inherently designed within us to be the solution. It is the solution. And just a quick experience, since we've been talking about bees, which I also have to share, I'm sitting at a park with Olivia, and as I tuned in, I kid you not, about 6, 7 bees just came and started swarming around me. One's landing right by my toe. And so the intelligence of the bees, the consciousness of the bees knows what's going on. We're talking about them. They're like, hey, look at me, look at me. And so just to honor the bees. But I had a property clearing experience a couple weeks ago, 2, 3 weeks ago, and Olivia wanted to go to the zoo. So I cleared the zoo. We went to the zoo, and I instantaneously, when I stepped foot on the ground, I just started to have this overwhelming sense of emotion. I started crying, and I could feel this pain, and I could feel the suffering of all the animals that were in captivity. And I just had to let it out. I had to release it. And I spoke with Laota when I was there, and she spoke with me, and she said, many times she has had the same experience where she could feel the pain and the suffering. It was just so immense that she had to stop and do what she knew to do to just clear the pain and suffering. Whether that be just focusing on releasing what needed to be released, asking for all that is to come forward and support. It was just so powerful. And so I did that in the moment when I was standing there. And I was able to connect with the consciousness of the life and the animals and all that was there, and listen and feel what was being shared with me. And it called me to continue this clearing. So I would continue clearing the zoo. I did this daily for a while. And then now it's a few times a week. But as I was just looking through my news feed, I saw an article that came forward, and it was of this exact same zoo that I went to in Milwaukee. And the article was that there was spotted a very rare, almost extinct bee. It's the rusty patch bumblebee. Now, these bees are almost 90% extinct. They're critically endangered, and they have not been seen in the area for many years. And interestingly enough, through the consciousness of quantum light property clearing, the consciousness of releasing suffering, life comes forward to show with us, show us that we are all connected. Going deeper, these bees have their hives in the ground. So, and I know Tiffany, you and I spoke about this, and Tiffany and I had this wonderful opportunity to join together in communication with the bees, and the symbiotic relationship of humanity with the bees is so crucial to us moving forward. The bees here that were endangered, having their hives in the ground, clearing the earth through the consciousness of quantum light property clearing, was able to release the suffering of the bees for them to come forward to show and acknowledge their presence by those in the zoo. And so now the zoo has released a statement to the mass public in the area to plant life, support life, consider the bees, consider yourself, consider the planet. And so this public announcement, this awareness, has everything to do with the ideology of getting in communion with clearing, communicating, helping all that is life that supports us. We are so interconnected. The
Yeah.
bees need us. We need the bees. We need the earth for all of our survival and
So
sustainability.
did those bees, they were underground for survival purposes?
Well, and Tiffany, please join in and share more, because I know you know more about this, but it is my understanding that these are just, this type of bee just intrinsically knows that's where it plants its hive. Its hive is grown in the earth. And it's not as common, but it is something that this is what this bee is from. So they're telling people not to mow their lawns, not put chemicals on their properties, support the bees because they're so extinct. So this extinct bee, this is just similar to humanity. Humanity is on a path to extinction,
Right.
just like the bees. So if we don't correct this, then, you know, we're not stepping into the solution, which
Right.
is us. So,
Great.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I want to, Tiffany, if you're available,
Yes.
before we're finished, we leave. Can you tell us what sorts of products that we can gain from bees, the bee hives, the bee products, it is
Yes.
extensions, so that people are aware of that?
Absolutely. And I'm going to try to talk quickly because there are three things I want to bring forward. One, very quickly, even beyond a product, the ancient Mayans, there was a bee that is almost extinct today as well, called a melipona bee. And it's a stingless bee, but they make their hives in circular spirals that become pyramids. And so it is said that the ancient Egyptians got the idea of how to structure pyramids off of this melipona bee and off of cave drawings of the melipona bee and in experiencing actually how the bees create this hive. And so that's even beyond a product. That's like a structure, a tomb, a culture just from the bees.
Right.
And you know, there are many ways that bees can help us. The products of the hive are honey, bee pollen, propolis, and beeswax. And, you know, they're all antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiviral. I mean, you can look up the benefits. There are hundreds of benefits of all of them. You know, the honey is the carbohydrates of the hive. The bee pollen is the protein of the hive. The propolis are the antibiotics of the hive. And we can use all of those in all of our lives in that way. And, you know, honey, other than ionic silver and vibration, honey and propolis are our two main go-tos, and salt are our two main go-tos for medicine in our family. We use them as preventative healing. We ingest a little bit of honey and bee pollen every day, but we also use it as topical healing. If anyone gets cut, we immediately put honey on it. It cleans the wound out. It pulls anything out of it that needs to be pulled out. Like, it will help you bleed even a little bit more at first, and then it'll help seal the wound.
It'll be like the raw honey that you're talking about that you can put on the wheels, a raw honey.
Yes, I do not mean what you are buying at the grocery store in a little plastic bear, unless it says, now some raw honey comes in a plastic bear, that's fine, but unless it says raw, and preferably raw local honey. But preferably that you're getting it from a local beekeeper who you know, who doesn't adulterate the honey, so that she or he does not feed the bees high fructose corn syrup, that the honey is not made by stressed out bees, by overworked bees, and you know that they're using good sustainable practices. And as far as the bee pollen, you know, bees pollinate a 3-mile radius, and so it's
Wow.
virtually impossible in the United States to find bee pollen. There's a study done in Purdue University, and they tested 100 different locations, bee pollen from 100 different locations all over the country, and every single one of them had, like 100% of the samples had pesticides in them. And because it's, I mean, I don't know anywhere in the United States where you can, unless you're in the middle of a national park, but then there isn't typically a beehive in the middle of a national park that, you know, someone's getting products from. And so, so when I source my bee pollen, I get it from New Zealand or Australia, where the regulations on pesticides are much different than the United States. Neonicotinoid pesticides and insecticides in the United States are one of the number one things that are killing bees. It disorients them, it confuses them, it poisons the hive. I mean, it's one of the major causes of colony collapse, if people have heard of that before. And because also bees are then, if bees are being fed sugar water, they're not able to fight off any of it either. So it's a multi-pronged problem.
Yeah. Wow.
But I've seen a fully functioning hive collapse in 3 days of ingesting pesticides, and every single bee would come back with neurological damage, not able to find the hive, with thousands and thousands of bees lying on the ground outside of the front of the hive. I mean,
Wow.
it was shocking.
So I know that you're doing classes on bees and so forth. How can someone find out? How can they locate you in order to learn more about bees and the classes that you offer?
Right now, they can email me. They can find me on Be Inspired, BEE dash inspired, INSPIRED .info. They can email me on there or sign up for a class on there. I teach a bee bonding class for adults and children to help them learn how to become more at one with
Yeah.
insects, and our upcoming, and we also do some really fun craft projects of our upcoming bee bonding class. We're going to make chapstick, and we're going to, you know, eventually make some medicine, and have, you
Yeah.
know, herbs inside the honey and all sorts of fun components. I do want to bring something else forward very quickly. I know we have 2 minutes, but something that we touched on earlier with the vibration of the bees. There have been studies, and I know this woman, her name's Valerie Solheim, and she put audio recordings inside a beehive, and she used the literal sound of the vibration of the bees to heal and clear patients and herself. She tore her meniscus and was going to have surgery, and she literally put the sound of the bees on a walkie-talkie. Is that what that's called? No, a Walkman.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, a Walkman.
mhm.
Walkie-talkie. And she put the headphones of the Walkman on her knees. And the vibration of the sound of the bees legitimately in 3 weeks healed her knee to the extent that she didn't have to have surgery, and that it was stronger than the knee that she didn't tear the meniscus on.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's just a whole nother, I mean, it's not a product of the hive, but it is a product of the hive. You know, it is a product of sitting next to the hive. It's a product of the bees in and of
Hmm.
themselves,
Hmm.
that can be utilized. So
Oh, that's so interesting. So interesting. Well, everyone knows how to contact Tiffany. There's so much to talk about. I've taken one of your class. Found it to be very, very informative, and fun. And just to learn about how things that you can make on your own, using the products. And I ordered the bee pollen from you because of its
yes,
purity level.
I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to place a new order for it too. So if anyone, people can also reach out to me at tiffanyRgorsky@gmail.com too for
Okay, cool.
more information. Some of the classes are on their website too, though.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Tiffany, for such an informative discussion on bees. Tavares, Lauren, thank you for contributing. I want to give a heads up for next week's Clubhouse. I'm inviting Lota again to come and speak, and she's going to talk about her book, The Call for Truth, The Call for the Truth book. And I recommend that those that are interested in joining to bring your questions, to the discussion that we're having on Clubhouse. It's going to be very enlightening and interesting. So please join. And she's going to pretty much dig deeper into the many concepts that she shares within her book. And also, if I also invite you to if you want to get a taste of the concept, I invite everyone to join the Divine Nation workshops that are given, Call for Truth Divination cards, utilizing them, which is a companion to the Call for the Truth book. And these are ongoing workshops where we're actively using divination cards and showing you how to use them, using them to answer questions about yourself, about circumstances, also intuitively using your own intuitive self in order to interpret these cards. But it can answer a limitless amount of questions. The workshop is completely free and a lot of fun. And I encourage people to sign up and join these sessions. Our next one is actually this coming Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, August 19th, 7 p.m. Central. So I encourage for you to sign up and join. I also would like to remind everyone that we're continuing our whole responsibility meditation sessions hosted by Enlikish Studios, held on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Time for only 30 minutes, tapping into the power of Ho'oponopono. A powerful technique of forgiveness, reconciliation, gratitude, assisting to shift our trajectories of our life circumstances into something that's greater. And another meditation that I recommend others you to join is the Dolphins and Whales, hosted by Donna of the Sun, which you can sign up on my website, Enlikish Studio 2, or of the Sun. But it's given on the first, second, and third Sundays of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's a highly restorative meditation session, only 30 minutes, lasting only 30 minutes. So again, thank you everyone for joining this Clubhouse session. Special thanks to Tiffany and providing us with such an enlightening discussion on the bees. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week on Clubhouse, where we're discussing more insightful topics, and we're going to talk to Lota, listen to her discussion, and ask some questions, dig deeper into the concepts that she provides in her book.
I'd like
And
to have
yes, go
I'd
ahead.
like to have some Veritas. I don't know, do we have time for a real little cute enchanting story?
All right. Well, it's after 8, but 2
Oh,
minutes.
okay. Two minutes. Okay, today, every day, it's part of my morning routine. I do Enlikish to the bees for organization, law, and order in my life, and I've become quite, close to them. Today, I was at a car wash. They was doing a hand car wash, and there was a table and chair out there, and they're like, "Don't sit there, don't sit there. The bees are there, the bees are there." And I'm like, "It's okay, it's okay." So I'm like, "No, no, don't sit up." So I sat there on the bees, and I had such an enchanting time with them. First of all, I end the custom. We were talking to them, and then have on my radio on my phone an actual beehive sound, and so I turned that on. And as I was sitting there enjoying that, watching them, they were like dancing around me. It was
Really, with the
so
beehive sound that you
beautiful.
were
They
playing.
heard it. Yes. It was like drawing them to like I became the hive or some kind, and it was like they were dancing around. So I thought that this was really remarkable and I so enjoyed every one of you who shared today all about the bees.
glorious. So
And
thank
thank you
you.
for
And the
such
kiss
a
and
nice,
Veritas.
insightful story, Donna, sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. And remember, knowledge is power, and taking action on this knowledge is true power. With honor, respect, and gratitude, I'm Lakesh Veritas.
And the kiss and Veritas. With honor,
Yes,
respect, and
Veritas,
Yes,
and
gratitude.
respect and
Veritas, with
gratitude.
honor, respect, and gratitude.
Gratitude, everyone.